In a crowded Middle Eastern marketplace, everything seemed normal, until gunfire ripped through the air and hidden bombs exploded beneath the stalls. Ryan Carter, a young Navy SEAL in AOR-2 camo, rushed civilians to safety, while his loyal German Shepherd Coda fought through smoke and debris at his side. But as the chaos grew, Ryan realized this wasn't random. Someone knew exactly where he would be and wanted him dead. And the attack in that marketplace was only the first shadow of a far darker enemy rising behind the scenes. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and the miracles God hides in the darkest places. The late afternoon light hung over Mosul like a thin veil of dust, warm but uneasy, settling across the narrow streets and low rooftops of the outer district. Lieutenant Ryan Carter led his SEAL team through the winding marketplace, each step measured, each breath attentive. The air carried the ordinary sounds of life, vendors calling out prices, children chasing a faded soccer ball, the faint rhythm of pots clanging in distant doorways. It was the kind of life Ryan had always wanted to protect, the kind his father once told him was worth every ounce of a soldier's strength. But beneath the surface, something subtle pressed against his instincts, a low hum of tension that made the back of his neck prickle. Nothing was wrong, yet nothing felt right. Coda walked close beside him, the German Shepherd's movement steady and controlled. The dog wasn't restless, but alert in a way Ryan had learned to trust completely. Coda's presence alone helped Ryan read the atmosphere with more precision than any satellite feed or intel briefing could ever provide. When Coda slowed, Ryan's pulse shifted. He lifted his closed fist. Signal to halt. The team froze. For a moment, everything in the market seemed perfectly normal. Too normal. A boy laughed while tossing a ball. A woman haggled loudly with a spice seller. An elderly man swept dust from his doorstep. Yet something about their eyes, quick flicks, nervous glances, told a different story. Then the tray dropped. It slipped from the hands of a man who had been pretending to sell bread, clattering loudly against the stone. For the briefest second, Ryan saw the man's expression, fear mixed with resignation, and underneath his robe, the unmistakable outline of a detonator. "Contact! Team Bravo! Fall back!" Ryan shouted, already shoving his shoulder against a market stall and pushing upward toward higher ground. The explosion hit like a hammer. A shock wave roared through the street, sending dust and debris spiraling into the air. The blast flattened several stalls, scattering wood, fruit, and screams in every direction. Ryan's ears rang violently as he climbed a low rooftop, Coda racing up the incline behind him. Gunfire erupted from hidden corners, from behind overturned carts, from windows left open just an inch too wide. The attackers were everywhere. Men who had moments earlier blended seamlessly into the crowd. Ryan dropped flat onto the roof tiles and swung up his MK-13 Mod 7. The scope cut through the haze, giving shape to shadows that weren't supposed to be there. He fired, fast but controlled. One shot cleared the alley, another forced a gunman into cover, another struck a rooftop sniper lining up on his teammates below. The team moved according to his voice. "Lewis, drag him out of the open! Turner, left corner, move now!" A civilian screamed near the south exit, trapped between collapsing stalls. Ryan shifted his rifle without hesitation, taking down the fighter sprinting toward her. "Clear! Go!" he yelled, watching two of his men pull her into safety. Even as he protected the retreat, the chaos ripped at him. Every muzzle flash, every scream, every shock of debris echoed memories he had buried for years. The marketplace of his childhood, the smoke, the terror, the moment he lost everything. Coda barked sharply, snapping him back to the present. A figure was climbing up the side of the building, rifle slung over his back. Ryan pivoted, fired once, watched the man collapse before reaching the roof. The air reeked of burned fabric and explosives. Civilians scrambled to hide behind anything that could serve as cover. 2 SEALs were down, but breathing. Ryan saw their silhouettes being dragged away by teammates toward the extraction route. He fired again, cutting off another attacker. Minutes stretched like hours. Gunfire ricocheted across walls. Smoke blurred the edges of every alley. Yet through it all, Ryan felt himself lock into the calm center he had spent years learning to access, the place his father had told him to find when fear tried to take over. Protect first, think after, live only if others can. Finally, the gunfire thinned, retreating footsteps scattered through the remaining smoke. The marketplace, once loud with life, fell quiet except for the distant cries of the injured and the fading crackle of small fires. Ryan exhaled slowly, lowering his rifle. The sun dipped lower, casting orange light across the rubble, warming the dust that settled on Coda's fur. His team regrouped in what remained of a collapsed storefront. Lewis appeared beside him, breath ragged. 3 civilians saved. 2 of ours hurt but stable. We made it out. Ryan nodded, though his heart felt heavier than success allowed. The attack had been too coordinated, too precise. These men hadn't fired wildly. They had aimed for positions that SEALs would instinctively move to. Someone was studying them. Someone had planned this in layers, waiting for the exact moment Ryan's team would appear in this exact street. Ryan stepped to the edge of the broken rooftop, scanning the ruins as night began to push away the last of the light. He felt the truth settle cold inside him. "This wasn't random," he murmured. Coda nudged his leg lightly as if confirming it. A shadow had moved today, something larger than the fighters they faced, someone who wanted to test them, someone who already knew too much. Ryan rested a hand on Coda's head. "We're not done here," he whispered. The night of Mosul thickened around them, carrying with it a silent promise of what was coming next. The evening after the ambush settled over Mosul in a muted glow, the kind of quiet that felt borrowed rather than earned. Ryan Carter sat alone beside a dim lantern in the makeshift outpost, Coda lying close enough for their breaths to share the same rhythm. The chaos of the marketplace still clung to his thoughts, playing back in sudden flashes, explosions, screams, and the unsettling clarity that the attack had not been random. But now, in this moment of stillness, another memory rose to the surface, one he rarely allowed himself to revisit. He let it come. The world around him faded, replaced by the distant warmth of childhood. Years earlier, long before sand and gunfire became familiar, he had been a boy running across an open training field while his father, David Carter, watched with the patience of someone who carried battles behind his eyes. David wasn't a loud man. He didn't brag about missions or medals. Most of what the world admired in him, Ryan learned only through whispers from his father's teammates, stories of Afghanistan, Iraq, and rescue missions conducted under impossible odds. But to Ryan, David was not a legend. He was simply a man who listened, who taught, who believed in the weight of small moments. On the field that day, David kneeled beside his young son, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. Hold your breath, he said gently, guiding Ryan's small hands around a training rifle. Feel the world get still when you do. Ryan tried. The rifle wobbled in his grasp, too heavy, too long. David chuckled under his breath. It's all right. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to learn when to act and when not to. Ryan looked up, confused. David tapped a finger lightly against his son's chest. You never pull this trigger because you're angry. You pull it because someone out there needs you to protect them. That's the only reason worth carrying. Ryan didn't fully understand the words then, but they sank deep, becoming a quiet compass that would guide him long after innocence was taken from him. One evening, as the sun dyed the park in soft orange, David handed his son a small silver object. It gleamed with a faint shine, warm from being held, a bullet casing engraved with 2 words, Protect, always. Ryan remembered the pride he felt, the gravity of receiving something so significant. David looked at him with eyes that held both strength and vulnerability. This belonged to your grandfather, he said, and now it's yours, not as a weapon, as a reminder. One day, you'll understand why our family carries it. The memory shifted. The park remained, but darkness edged into it, an abrupt contrast to the warmth just moments before. Ryan remembered the distant thump of an explosion far down the street. People paused. Some looked around in confusion. His father stiffened instantly, instincts snapping into place. Ryan, David murmured, stay close to me. They walked. Faster! The second explosion hit closer, the shock wave rippling through the ground. Shouting erupted. Smoke rose, panic spread like wildfire. David grabbed Ryan's hand and pulled him toward a stone fountain for cover. Ryan remembered trying to ask questions, but his father's focus was already elsewhere. Tracking movement, measuring distance, calculating threats. Then came the third blast, much closer. The sound drowned everything else. A figure stepped through the smoke, jacket torn, eyes cold, grip firm on a rifle. David reacted in an instant. He shoved Ryan behind the fountain, shielding him with his own body. Gunfire cracked through the air. David didn't yell. He didn't falter. He only turned his head slightly toward his son and whispered one final line, one that etched itself permanently into Ryan's memory. Run when I tell you. He never got the chance. Ryan didn't see the shot that hit his father. He only felt the world tilt, heard the desperate voices around them fade into a hollow ringing, and watched the strongest man he had ever known collapse onto the stone. Even years later, Ryan could still taste the metallic fear in his mouth. He could still feel the helplessness that wrapped around him like chains. In the present, Ryan opened his eyes slowly, breath uneven. Coda lifted his head, sensing the shift in Ryan's heartbeat. Ryan rested a hand gently on the dog's shoulder. I know, he whispered. I'm all right. But he wasn't. Not completely. The ambush in Mosul had ripped open scars he had learned to hide well. Someone out there wanted Ryan's team dead. Someone out there had orchestrated the attack with intent. And if that intent reached back to the day his father died, then he was standing in a storm far larger than just a battlefield in Iraq. Ryan took the silver casing from his pocket. The engraving caught the lantern's glow. Protect. Always. He closed his hand around it. The vow he made as a child tightened in his chest with renewed fire. He would not let history repeat itself. Not for his men, not for the civilians under their protection, and not for the memory of the man who had taught him everything about courage. In the shadows of the outpost, With night settling deeply over Mosul, Ryan whispered the promise that would guide every decision he made from this point forward. "I won't fail you, Dad. Not again." And somewhere inside him, the boy who once watched his father fall rose with quiet determination, ready for the fight that was coming. The underground bunker lay beneath the battered outskirts of Mosul, its concrete walls holding back the weight of the city above like an aging spine. The room was dim, lit by a handful of lamps that buzzed softly, casting uneven shadows over maps, radios, and scattered gear. The scent of sand, sweat, and lingering cordite mixed in the air, a reminder of the chaos they had barely escaped. Ryan Carter stepped inside with Coda at his heel, the dog moving silently but alert, sensing the tension that clung to every man in the room. The team had gathered around a table cluttered with satellite images and hastily drawn diagrams. Despite their exhaustion, each of them stood straight, waiting. They trusted Ryan, not because of rank, but because he had walked them out of death's doorway only hours earlier. Ryan scanned their faces. Lewis, still bruised from debris. Turner, wrapping gauze around his arm. Corporal Jenkins, already checking his ammo as if preparing for the next fight before this one had even been fully understood. These men weren't just soldiers. They were brothers, forged by fire. And tonight, they were looking to him for answers. Commander Hale wasn't present. He was coordinating from another outpost, leaving Ryan as the acting commander of the forward team. The responsibility sat heavily, but not unfamiliar. Ryan approached the table and placed both hands on it, leaning in. He studied the marked positions, arrows showing enemy movement, circles where shots had originated, lines that made patterns only someone trained to notice such things would see, patterns that disturbed him. "All right," Ryan began, his voice steady but quieter than usual. "Let's go over it." Turner limped forward, tapping a finger toward one cluster of marks. "These weren't random fighters, sir. They moved like they were being directed. Someone was calling the shots in real time." Lewis nodded. "They were positioned exactly where we'd take cover. They anticipated every fallback point." Ryan already knew this. He'd felt it during the chaos, like unseen eyes were watching not just the street, but him. He traced one line across the map with a slow movement. "This wasn't an ambush designed to wipe us out," he said. "It was designed to measure us, to read how we respond." Jenkins frowned. "Why us specifically?" Ryan didn't answer, not because he didn't know, but because he wasn't ready to say it out loud. Coda nudged his hand lightly, grounding him. Lewis cleared his throat. "Sir, what's our next move?" This was the moment Ryan had been turning over in his mind from the instant the gunfire stopped. Fear didn't drive him. Anger didn't either. What moved him was clarity, sharp, cold, unwavering clarity. He straightened, picking up a marker and drawing 3 lines across the map in quick, decisive strokes. "We hit back," Ryan said. "Hard, fast, and from 3 angles." He pointed to the north sector, an abandoned construction zone with decaying scaffolding. "Turner, you and Jenkins enter here. Find elevation. Make a perimeter." He pointed to the western alleyway, a maze of collapsed walls and narrow escape routes. "Lewis, you'll take your unit through this corridor. It's tight, but if we push fast, we can drive them toward the center." Then he tapped the heart of the map, the spot where he believed the hidden commander had positioned the shooters during the attack. "I'll take the main route. Coda with me. We cut off their escape and end this before they have time to reposition." Some of the men exchanged glances, surprised but not doubtful. Ryan Carter didn't issue reckless orders. His instincts were the kind soldiers survive on. Turner spoke softly. "Sir, that central push is the most dangerous route." "I know," Ryan replied. "That's why I'm taking it." He wasn't trying to be heroic. He simply understood where he needed to be. He always had. Hannah Ruiz, the intelligence officer, stepped forward. She hadn't spoken until now, but her eyes held the weight of someone who had been piecing together data in silence. "Ryan, I analyzed the timing patterns of the shooters earlier. Their movements suggest a field commander, someone experienced. If you take the main route, you may be walking straight into him." Ryan didn't flinch. "Good." The room fell silent at that. Coda's ears twitched slightly, sensing the shift in mood. Hannah set her tablet down. "Just be careful. Whoever planned the ambush knows sealed playbooks. That's not normal." "No," Ryan agreed, "it's not." He paused, letting the silence settle around them, feeling the weight of what had happened in his childhood, surfacing again in the smoke of today's battlefield. He looked around the room, at men who had risked their lives for one another, at the dog who had saved him more times than he could count, at the map stained with dirt and sweat. He closed his hand around the silver bullet casing hanging beneath his shirt. His father's voice echoed faintly in memory. "You protect because someone must." He lifted his head. "Listen carefully," Ryan said, his voice low but unwavering. "We don't fight for anger. We don't fight to punish them for what they did today." The men stood entirely still now, drawn into his words. "We fight so no child ever sees what I saw." His team didn't ask what he meant. They understood. They felt it. The briefing ended. Weapons were checked. Routes memorized. Hearts steadied. The men filed out into the tunnel leading to the surface, one by one, shadows blending with shadows. Ryan stayed behind for a final moment, looking at the map once more. The enemy had made their move. Now it was his turn. Coda waited at the doorway, tail still, eyes locked on him, ready for whatever came. "Let's go finish this," Ryan whispered. Together they stepped into the rising tension of night, unaware that the strike they were planning would soon lead them straight into the sights of 10 unseen snipers waiting among the ruins, and even less aware that this would be only the beginning. Night settled over the ruined district like a heavy curtain, muffling sound and swallowing light. The air felt colder here, colder than the bunker, colder than the open desert. Ryan Carter led the team through the shattered remains of old stone buildings and half-collapsed apartments, their footsteps quiet against the debris. The darkness in Mosul was never gentle, it always carried weight. But tonight it felt sentient, as if watching their every move. And somewhere inside that darkness, 10 snipers waited, 10 rifles, 10 scopes, 10 patient breaths. Ryan could feel them, not see, feel. He had learned long ago that some threats did not reveal themselves until the moment they decided you were already dead. But he also knew one truth that separated hunters from prey. He had Coda beside him. The German shepherd moved like a shadow bound to his heel, no hesitation, no fear, just readiness. The kind of readiness forged through years of standing between Ryan and danger. As the team advanced deeper into the ruined district, they split exactly as planned. Turner and Jenkins took the elevated construction zone to the north. Lewis guided the secondary unit into the western passage. Ryan and Coda pushed straight into the heart of the enemy's kill zone. The air grew tighter the farther they went, as if the city itself held its breath. Ryan stopped near a collapsed archway. "Hold," he whispered. Coda froze instantly. Ryan slowly raised his binoculars, scanning the rooftops. He saw nothing. No silhouette, no glint of glass, no shifting dust. But the silence had weight. He spoke into his comms, voice low. "Eyes up. They're here." A reply came from Turner. "Sir, I've got movement on the crane platform. Looks like a rifle barrel." Before Ryan could respond, a sharp crack sliced the air. Turner hissed in pain. "I'm hit. Arm, I'm good. Jenkins is moving me back." Ryan's pulse tightened. The snipers were already firing, and they weren't missing by accident. "Don't expose yourself," Ryan ordered. "They want you to move. Stay low." Another shot rang out, this one closer. A piece of concrete shattered inches from Ryan's boot. Coda growled, not loud, but deep, controlled, the sound of a creature that knew exactly what death smelled like. Ryan's instincts sharpened instantly. He dropped behind a slab of broken stone, shouldered his MK-13, and exhaled. The trick was to look for what wasn't natural, a straight line where nothing should be straight, a shadow that didn't belong, a flicker of heat against cooling stone. And he saw it, a faint shimmer on a rooftop 2 buildings away. Not light, movement. He adjusted his scope, found the angle, found the space where the shooter would lean into position, aimed there, not at the glint. He pulled the trigger. The muzzle flash on the rooftop vanished. A body rolled down the slanted tiles. "One down," Ryan murmured. But it wasn't relief. It was confirmation. These weren't amateurs. These were trained marksmen, organized, positioned across the entire block. Someone had hired professionals, Spetsnaz, foreign contractors, Constantine's network? No, Ryan couldn't assume yet. Not until he had faces, not shadows. Another shot screamed past him, shattering a rusted pipe. Steam burst upward, clouding his vision. A perfect trap, cover for them, blindness for him. "Coda, with me," Ryan whispered, and they moved. Fast, silent. They crossed the alley in 3 seconds. A bullet slammed into the wall behind them the moment they reached cover. They weren't being shot at. They were being tracked. Coda stiffened, ears tilting, head turning slightly toward a rooftop. Ryan trusted that instinct more than any intel report. He aimed where Coda stared. A muzzle blinked. Ryan fired before the second blink. Another sniper fell, but 8 remained. His comms crackled. "Lewis, we're pinned down. Snipers on the south tower and rooftop cluster," Ryan answered. "Mark positions." "Marked, transmitting now." Dots appeared on Ryan's mini display, 8 red signatures arranged with surgical precision. They weren't spread randomly. They formed a hunting circle, a design meant to squeeze prey into one kill zone. "They're hurting us," Ryan realized aloud. A breath of wind moved through the ruins, the kind that carried dust and danger together. "Not tonight," Ryan muttered. He mapped a route in seconds. "Lewis, when I say move, you shift west 10 meters. Stay low. Go only when I give the word." "Copy." Ryan and Coda climbed a narrow staircase of cracked stone. Each step groaned under their boots. At the top, he crouched behind a fractured balcony, scanning. He spotted 2 snipers covering Lewis's sector. He steadied his rifle. "Lewis, on my shot." He fired twice. 2 silhouettes dropped. "Move now!" Lewis's team dashed through the opening, taking new cover just as another sniper tried to adjust his aim. Ryan took that one down too. 4 remaining. Ryan looked at Coda. "Ready?" Coda barked once, quiet but certain. They descended, moving deeper into the darkened maze. Another shot cracked. This one wasn't aimed at them. It was aimed at Turner's retreat route. "Sir, Jenkins is hit. Leg wound." Ryan's voice hardened. "Keep pressure. We'll handle the shooters." He scaled another collapsed wall, dust coating his gloves. Coda climbed beside him, nails scraping stone. Ryan scanned again. Another glint. A tiny reflection where no reflection should be. He fired. 3 remaining. He turned, fired again. 2 left. The second-to-last sniper wasn't hiding well. He fired wildly, panicked. Ryan eliminated him quickly. Only 1 remained, 1 final rifle somewhere in the ruins. The silence grew heavy again. Ryan closed his eyes briefly, listening, not to sound, but to absence. Coda stepped forward, muscles tense, gaze fixed on a shadowed tower. Ryan aligned his rifle with that tower. A faint breath of wind pushed a sheet of metal aside just an inch. That inch was enough. Ryan fired. The final sniper slumped over the railing of the tower, then dropped into the dust below. Silence returned to Mosul. But it was a different silence now, not tense, not waiting, just empty. Ryan lowered his rifle slowly. His breath steadied, but exhaustion edged into the corners of his thoughts. Coda pressed his head lightly against Ryan's hand, grounding him. Turner's voice cracked through comms. "Sir, are they all down?" "Yes," Ryan answered quietly. "All of them." But standing among the ruins, watching smoke drift upward into the moonlit sky, he felt no victory, only certainty. This attack, this arrangement of professional killers, was not a coincidence. Someone had sent them, someone who understood precision warfare, someone who had a reason to target him. And that someone had just revealed the first piece of a much larger game. Ryan exhaled, looking toward the distant dark horizon. "This is personal," he murmured. Neither the night nor the ruins offered an answer, but Coda lifted his head toward the direction of the wind, ears alert, as if sensing a storm that Ryan hadn't yet named. Dawn crept reluctantly across the shattered skyline of Mosul, turning the dust-filled air into faint streaks of gold and gray. The city was quiet now, too quiet, its silence heavy with the aftermath of the night's battle. Ryan Carter walked through the ruins with Coda at his side, boots crunching over broken stone and shell fragments. Each step carried the weight of what had happened only hours before. 10 professional snipers, sent deliberately, positioned with surgical precision, waiting for him and his team. Whoever commanded them knew SEAL tactics intimately. Whoever commanded them wanted Ryan alive long enough to be tested. And now, behind the silence of early morning, answers waited. The team gathered inside a partially collapsed government building they had converted into a temporary safe house. The air smelled of wet cement and burnt wiring. Some of the men rested, others cleaned their rifles or tended to wounds. Turner sat with his arm in a sling, trying to pretend the pain didn't bother him. Jenkins lay on a stretcher, awake but pale, leg bandaged tight. Despite their injuries, their eyes followed Ryan as soon as he entered, looking for direction, reassurance, or perhaps understanding. But Ryan himself did not yet have the understanding they needed. He only had instinct, and instinct told him one thing. This was just beginning. Lewis stepped into the room, holding a small sealed pouch recovered from the rooftop where one of the snipers had fallen. "Sir, we found this on the second shooter you dropped. Thought you should see it first." Ryan took the pouch, opened it, and found a small black flash drive inside, not military issue, civilian, cheap, but attached to its corner was a symbol burned into the casing, the outline of a wolf's head with metal fangs. Ryan felt something inside him grow colder. "Iron Fang," he murmured. Hannah Ruiz, who had been analyzing comms equipment at the far end of the safe house, immediately looked up. "Iron Fang? Are you sure?" "Positive." She walked over quickly, eyes narrowing as she examined the drive. "They're not small players. Gun runners, mercenaries, ex-Spetsnaz. They work only for money or revenge." Ryan recognized the name, but only distantly. A whisper of something from his father's old conversations, half-remembered phrases about men who vanished into the underworld of warfare. But there was something more in Hannah's voice. Fear disguised as professionalism. "What is it?" he asked. Hannah exhaled, hesitating. "Iron Fang used to work with a man named Victor Constantine. Their symbol originated from one of his old units." The name hit Ryan like a blow he wasn't prepared for. Time slowed, memories shifting behind his eyes like dust swept by wind. Victor Constantine? A name he had heard only once in his life, spoken quietly by his father on a night long before war had taken him. He remembered sitting beside David Carter at their kitchen table, the lights dim, the tone serious. "There are men you never trust, Ryan, men who wear honor like a mask. Constantine is one of them." Ryan snapped back to the present when Lewis added, "Sir, there's more in the pouch." Ryan reached inside again and pulled out several folded papers, stiff and stained by sand. As he opened them carefully, his breath caught. The first sheet was a document written in Russian, stamped with an emblem, Iron Fang, Operative Registry. The second sheet held a photo, a grainy, time-faded image of two men standing together near a military truck in Iraq decades earlier. One man was younger, clean-shaven, eyes sharp and defiant. The other was David Carter, Ryan's father. The room fell silent. Even Coda, sensing the sudden shift in Ryan's heartbeat, pressed closer to him. Hannah studied the photo with disbelief. "Your father served with Constantine?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. He stared at the image, tracing the lines of his father's face, steady, resolute, strong. The man beside him had a cold stare, the kind that suggested a storm beneath the surface. Something about that photograph radiated tension. They didn't look like friends. Ryan's voice, when it came, was steady but hollow. "My father never mentioned him, not once." Hannah frowned. "Which is exactly why we should be worried. Every indication is that Constantine worked covert operations before turning into whatever he is now. If Iron Fang is involved, and if Constantine had ties to them in the past—" Ryan finished the sentence quietly. "Then this isn't random. They came for us because of him." Lewis leaned forward. "Sir, why would Constantine target you?" Ryan took a slow breath. The memory of his father's death crashed back into him like shrapnel. His father shielding him at the park, the explosion, the gunfire, the man disappearing into the smoke. A face he never fully saw, a shadow he never could forget. "Because," Ryan said softly, "my father stopped someone once, someone who didn't forgive easily." He opened the last paper. It was a handwritten list. Most names were crossed out with thick red ink. Only 2 names remained uncrossed. David Carter, Ryan Carter. The ink was fresh. A chill went through the room. The list was a kill record and a promise. Ryan's jaw tightened. He folded the papers carefully and put them in his vest. His voice, when he spoke again, was colder than any night in Mosul. "Constantine isn't finished. He's tying up old threads. My father stopped him once, and now he's coming for what's left." Hannah stared at Ryan. "Do you think he's alive?" "Constantine." "Alive or not," Ryan said, "his reach is." Coda let out a soft growl. Not fear, but recognition, loyalty, readiness. Ryan turned to his team, his expression sharp with purpose. "This isn't just a fight anymore. This is a message, and we're going to answer it." He stepped toward the bunker exit, gripping the silver casing under his shirt, his father's gift, his family's oath. Outside, the sun finally climbed above the rooftops, revealing the scars of the night's battle and the path that now lay ahead. But the light did nothing to warm him. Behind its glow stretched a shadow cast decades ago, one he now had no choice but to walk into. And somewhere across the desert, in a place Ryan could not yet see, a man with cold eyes had already begun writing the next chapter of their unfinished war. The desert of Nineveh stretched endlessly beneath a sun that seemed forged for metal, its light sharp enough to cut. Heat shimmered above the dunes like a mirage of ghosts, unsteady, wavering, impossible to trust. But Ryan Carter had long ceased relying on the comfort of what could be seen. In war, truth lived beneath the surface. And today, the surface of this desert hid an operation that would define everything that came after. Operation Iron Dusk. The convoy moved in silence across the sand, armored vehicles kicking dust into long ribbons trailing behind them. Inside the lead truck, Ryan sat across from Commander Hale, who had joined them from the forward command base after reviewing the Iron Fang documents. Hale's face was pinched with fatigue, but his eyes carried a sharpened awareness. He wasn't here as backup. He was here because he knew the scope of what they were facing now. Opposite them, Coda lay at Ryan's feet, head lifted, ears alert, ready for whatever the desert chose to reveal. Intel satellite scans show Constantine's remaining forces dug in across a 30-mile spread. Hale began, tapping a tablet showing red clusters dotting the map like a rash of wounds. "They're fortified, heavily armed, and expecting retaliation." Ryan nodded slowly, memorizing every formation, every gap. "Iron Fang doesn't leave survivors," he said quietly. "If we don't end this now, they'll regroup and strike somewhere we can't predict." Hale studied him for a moment. "This is bigger than your father, Carter." Ryan's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "I know." He did know, and yet, beneath that knowledge, another truth lived like a pulse. This wasn't only a mission. It was a continuation of a battle that began years ago, when a bomb tore his childhood apart and a shadowed figure walked away through smoke. The convoy halted at the staging point, a jagged ridge overlooking a valley where ancient ruins jutted through the sand like broken knuckles. Beneath them, Iron Fang operatives moved through makeshift trenches, bunkers carved from rock, and fortified sniper nests. Turner limped toward Ryan, arm still in its sling, but determination hardening his voice. "Sir, we're set. Jenkins is patched enough to run comms. Lewis is anchoring the left flank." "Good," Ryan replied. "You follow Hale's team. Coda and I will push east." Hale raised a brow. "You're taking the far road? That's the densest sector." "That's why it needs to be hit hardest," Ryan answered. Hale didn't argue. He knew Ryan's instincts were the kind forged by experience and sharpened by something deeper, something personal. The sun dipped lower, bleeding orange light into the valley. Perfect timing. Shadows lengthened, turning the trenches into dark veins. "Operation Iron Dusk is live," Hale declared into his comms. All units, advance. The valley erupted. Gunfire cracked across the dunes. Grenades sent plumes of sand skyward. Iron Fang mercenaries scrambled into defensive positions as the SEAL team surged forward from 3 directions like converging storms. Ryan moved through the chaos with lethal precision. Each step was measured, each shot deliberate. Coda darted ahead, weaving through debris, alerting Ryan to ambush points before they unfolded. The dog's instincts saved Ryan from 2 mines and an ambush behind a crumbling wall. In return, Ryan covered Coda with unwavering focus. Every threat near the dog met a bullet before it could rise into danger. One trench collapsed in front of them after enemy explosives detonated prematurely. The blast sent a shock wave that knocked Ryan off his feet and showered Coda with debris. The dog yelped, a rare sound that cut deeper than any wound. "Coda!" Ryan scrambled toward him, heart pounding, but Coda pushed himself up, shaking sand from his coat, eyes still fierce as fire. The dog nudged Ryan's knee, insisting they continue. Ryan exhaled shakily. "All right, boy, let's finish this." They pressed deeper. Mortar fire streaked overhead, striking the dunes behind them. Turning a corner, Ryan charged into a fortified corridor where Iron Fang gunners held position behind metal sheets. He hurled a flash grenade, shielding his face as it burst into white fire. Coda leapt through the disoriented defenders. Ryan followed, dropping each target before they could recover. Hours bled into the sand before the valley finally began to fall silent. Iron Fang forces scattered or lay defeated. Smoke drifted upward from burning bunkers. The sun had slipped behind the horizon, leaving only the echo of battle and the low hum of comms. Commander Hale approached through the haze, wiping dust from his brow. "We've secured the sector. Most of Iron Fang's ground strength is neutralized." Ryan nodded, but didn't relax. Something felt wrong, incomplete, as if the desert itself held back information he needed. A junior operator sprinted toward them. "Sir, you need to hear this." He handed Hale a tablet. Hale pressed play. Grainy security footage appeared, stateside night vision green, time stamped only an hour earlier. A hallway, blood on the floor, shadows moving. Ryan stepped closer, breath tightening. The footage revealed 6 bodies, 6 SEAL trainees. His trainees. Hale's voice grew strained. "These were your men, Carter." Ryan swallowed hard, forcing his voice steady. "Where?" "California. Hit simultaneously. Clean. Tactical. No mistakes." Ryan's heart slammed like a fist against bone. His hands curled into fists without meaning to. Hale hesitated before adding the final blow. A message was left at each site. He showed Ryan the still image, a symbol painted in blood. Iron Fang. And beside it, a name scrawled crudely but unmistakably, Carter. The desert wind howled softly, picking up grains of sand and sweeping them across Ryan's boots. Coda pressed into his leg, sensing the fury rising inside him. Operation Iron Dusk had ended, but the war had only sharpened, and Constantine had just struck at the heart of Ryan's purpose. Ryan closed his eyes briefly, gripping the silver bullet casing beneath his shirt. His father's legacy had become his burden, and now his vow. When he opened his eyes again, anger had sharpened into something colder, clearer. Resolve. "Commander," Ryan said quietly, "this ends with Constantine. Wherever he is, whatever he's planning, I'm going after him." Hale didn't question it. He only nodded once, and somewhere deep inside the darkened valley, the desert whispered its approval. A soft wind carrying the promise of the battle still waiting on the horizon. Night had fallen over the temporary command center outside Nineveh, a vast stretch of tents and metal containers lit by generator-powered floodlights that buzzed in the dark. The air smelled of burnt sand, sweat, and disinfectant, a mixture Ryan Carter had grown used to, though tonight it felt heavier, as if the desert itself understood the weight of the news that had shattered the aftermath of Operation Iron Dusk. Inside a dim communications tent, Ryan stood alone before the humming screen that replayed the same message over and over, a message that had arrived only 20 minutes ago, a message from a ghost his father once warned him about. The face on the screen appeared under flickering warehouse lights framed by rusted beams and corroded steel sheets. The man's hair had gone almost entirely silver, but his eyes were the same hard, calculating stare Ryan had seen in the photograph from Iraq. Victor Constantine. He spoke in a calm, measured voice, the kind of voice used by men who believed time itself served them. "Ryan Carter," Constantine began, almost with a hint of amusement. "I wondered how long it would take before you looked directly at me." Behind him, 3 figures kneeled on the dusty concrete, hands bound, heads down. Ryan's chest tightened as he recognized them. 3 of his former trainees, young, sharp, determined, men who looked up to him the way he once looked up to his father. They were bruised, but alive, for now. Constantine paced behind them, the faint echo of his boots bouncing off the empty walls of the warehouse. "Your father was a complicated man," he continued, "a good soldier, but misguided. He believed honor was something fixed, something that could not be broken. I tried to show him otherwise. Unfortunately, he refused to learn." Ryan's fingers curled against the metal edge of the table. Coda, lying nearby, sensed the rising tension and lifted his head, ears pricking, gaze locked on Ryan's trembling hand. Constantine leaned close to the camera. His eyes, though aged, still held a glint of cold intellect. "Your father thought he could stop me. He failed. But before he died, he taught me something valuable. He taught me that the Carter bloodline is stubborn." A cruel smile formed. "So I am giving you the same chance I gave him." He gestured toward the hostages. "These men have done nothing wrong aside from choosing to learn under you. Their lives now belong to a choice you will make. If you want them back, come find me." He stepped aside, revealing a set of coordinates scrawled messily across the concrete wall, a region straddling the Syrian border, a lawless expanse, a graveyard for soldiers. "Come alone," Constantine said. "Bring only your dog. If even one seal crosses that border with you, these men die." Ryan's breath grew slow, forced, restrained. Constantine watched him as if savoring the silent storm inside the younger man. "Your father never stopped." "Me?" he whispered. "Let's see if you can." The video cut abruptly, leaving only static. Ryan stood motionless, shoulders tense, jaw set. His thoughts moved like a silent avalanche. Not confusion. He knew exactly what Constantine wanted. Not fear. He had carried fear since the day he lost his father, and now it no longer controlled him. It was something deeper, a vow resurfacing, a war he hadn't chosen but had inherited. Coda nudged his thigh gently, grounding him. The dog didn't need words to understand what Ryan felt. Loss, duty, fury sharpened into purpose. Commander Hale entered the tent, his face grim. "Carter, I just saw the transmission. We're coordinating a rescue plan." "No," Ryan cut in, voice low. Hale blinked. Carter? He said if anyone crosses that border with me, he'll kill them instantly. You know he will. He doesn't bluff. Hale stepped closer, lowering his voice. You cannot go alone. It's suicide. Constantine has half a battalion's worth of mercenaries. He'll bury you and the dog before you get within a mile. Ryan didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply lifted the silver bullet casing from under his shirt, the one engraved with protect. Always. Hale's expression shifted. He understood. This was no longer about tactics. This was about the Carter legacy, unfinished business passed from father to son. Hale let out a frustrated breath. You're really going, aren't you? I have to, Ryan said quietly. He's not after the SEALs. He's after me. Hale shook his head. He's after everything your father tried to build. Don't let him manipulate you. Ryan's eyes hardened. He killed my trainees. Those boys trusted me. He has 3 more. If I don't go, Constantine wins without firing a shot. Hale stared at him for a long moment, the weight of command and friendship fighting inside his expression. Finally, he placed a firm hand on Ryan's shoulder. At least let me give you intel support, drones, satellite, something. Ryan considered. I'll accept eyes on the target. Nothing more. No boots across the border. Hale nodded reluctantly. Then God help you, Carter. Ryan turned to Coda. The dog stood immediately, sensing the shift from deliberation to decision. Ryan knelt and rested a hand on Coda's shoulders. It's just you and me again, he murmured. Coda's eyes were steady, unwavering, ready. Ryan rose, collecting his gear, his father's old sniper rifle, cleaned and reinforced, additional magazines, a combat knife, minimal rations, a compact med kit, enough to fight, not enough to survive comfortably, but survival wasn't the goal. He stepped out of the tent. The night air struck him, cool, sharp, carrying desert sand like whiskers brushing against skin. SEALs watched from a distance but said nothing. Some saluted. Others simply nodded. Respect, fear, hope. Ryan said nothing as he passed. Words felt too small for what he was walking into. At the edge of camp, he paused only once, looking toward the distant horizon where darkness swallowed the land beyond the border. Somewhere out there, Constantine waited. Somewhere out there, 3 trainees clung to life. And somewhere inside Ryan, the weight of his father's final lesson beat like a second heart. He whispered into the night, "This ends with you, Constantine." Coda stepped forward. Ryan followed, and together, under a moonlit sky, man and dog walked toward the place the world forgot, where the next chapter of a generational war awaited them in the shadows. The desert beyond the Syrian border was not a landscape. It was an open wound, vast, silent, and merciless. By the time Ryan and Coda crossed into the no-man's land, where maps turned unreliable and signals thinned, night had carved the dunes into jagged silhouettes under a sliver of moonlight. The air was colder here, deceptively calm, as if waiting. Ryan moved with measured steps, every sense sharpened by the knowledge that he was walking directly into a trap. Constantine wanted him to come alone, but he also wanted him to suffer before dying. Men like Constantine didn't crave victory. They craved orchestration. Coda walked slightly ahead, nose low, body rigid with focus. The dog's instincts had saved Ryan more times than weapons ever could. Tonight, those instincts were all they had. After an hour of silent travel, Coda suddenly halted, tail stiff. Ryan dropped to one knee behind a slanted boulder. "What is it, boy?" Coda's ears flicked, and Ryan followed his gaze. Up ahead, half buried beneath a dune, a thin metal thread glinted, a tripwire. Another one lay 3 feet to the left, another at the base of a rock. Mines, layers of them. Ryan exhaled slowly. He mined the whole perimeter. He studied the ground carefully, searching for a path. Coda didn't move until Ryan tapped his shoulder. Permission. They advanced inch by inch, weaving through an invisible maze of explosives that stretched farther than the moonlight could reach. Sometimes Coda froze. Sometimes Ryan did. The desert revealed traps like a bitter storyteller revealing plot turns, only when the listener was ready to hurt a little more. When they finally reached the first structure of the fortress, Ryan paused to take it in. The place looked ancient, an abandoned military outpost from a forgotten war, its walls eroded by time, its towers fractured by sandstorms. But now it was alive again, reinforced with steel panels, heavy floodlights, camouflage tarps, tripod-mounted guns peeking out from gaps in the walls. Constantine had turned history into a weapon. Ryan crouched behind a crumbling stone pillar, studying the fortress's defenses. No guards visible, no patrols. It was too still, too perfect. Darkness usually carried whispers, shuffling boots, hushed voices. But the silence here was the silence of expectation. Then he saw why. Human-shaped silhouettes stood along the ramparts, positioned to create the illusion of guards. Ryan narrowed his eyes. Dummies! He scanned again and recognized something else. Heat signatures. But they were too steady, unmoving. Thermal decoys. Constantine was leading him toward a kill funnel. He skirted the left flank. Coda stayed close. As they approached a cracked breach in the wall, Ryan's senses flared, instinct sharpening to a razor's edge. Wait! Coda froze instantly. Ryan leaned forward a hair. A faint metallic gleam peeked from behind rubble. A pressure plate. And another. And another. A corridor of death disguised as a convenient entrance. That's not the way in, he whispered. He doubled back, circling toward the rear of the fortress where the walls sagged but seemed quiet. The moon dipped behind clouds, dimming the desert. Perfect timing. He climbed the slanted rubble, pulling himself onto the outer ledge. A shadow flickered near the tower. Ryan drew his knife quietly. Coda pressed low against the stone, waiting for a signal. Ryan's heart slowed. Breath softened. One step, another. The shadow moved again. Too fluid to be a dummy. A guard. Finally! Ryan lunged, catching the guard in a silent chokehold, lowering him without sound. Only then did he see what the man had in his pocket. A small shard of reflective glass angled toward the courtyard below. A signal tool. Someone had been watching the exact angle Ryan approached from. A shot cracked. Stone exploded beside him. Sniper fire. Close. Too close. Ryan and Coda dove behind a low wall as another shot shattered the edge. The angle was wrong for a rooftop sniper. The bullet didn't come from above. It came from inside the fortress. Of course. Constantine wasn't predicting how Ryan would enter. He was watching him enter. Ryan dropped into the inner yard of the fortress, landing behind a rusted jeep. Coda jumped down beside him. Another shot hit the jeep's fender, sparking. Ryan peeked through the shattered window. He saw him. A sniper positioned on a metal walkway, rifle steady, body completely relaxed. Not just trained, seasoned. Ryan moved fast. He slid behind crates, rolled beneath a metal beam, climbed a ladder silently. Coda kept low, creeping beneath the scaffolding. The sniper fired again, missing Ryan by inches as he closed the gap. Ryan sprang onto the platform and slammed into the shooter, knocking the rifle away. The two struggled, bodies slamming against railing. The sniper swung a knife. Ryan caught his wrist, twisted, struck his throat with his forearm. The man collapsed instantly. But the real threat wasn't the sniper. It was the door beyond him, reinforced, locked, half-opened, light glowing beneath it. Ryan approached it slowly. A faint echo drifted from the other side. A man's voice humming a tune, calm, casual, almost amused. Constantine. Ryan felt his pulse ignite, but he forced himself to breathe. He wouldn't burst in blindly. He wouldn't give Constantine that satisfaction. He turned toward Coda. "You ready?" Coda's eyes sharpened. Ryan pushed the door open. The room was barely lit. Broken concrete, metal crates, and at its center, Constantine stood with his back turned, examining an old Dragunov sniper rifle laid carefully on a table. The same model Ryan's father once mentioned in a quiet story of betrayal. "You're just like him," Constantine said without turning. "I could hear your footsteps from the moment you entered the yard." Ryan raised his gun. "Turn around." Constantine did, slowly. His face was older, carved with lines, but his eyes were the same cold steel from the photograph. "You grew into a fine shadow of your father." "Where are the hostages?" Ryan demanded. Constantine smiled faintly. "Close enough to hear your failure, far enough that you can't save them." Ryan fired. Constantine moved faster than expected, ducking behind a pillar. The bullet tore into concrete. Then the room erupted. Gunfire rained from vents above. Hidden turrets activated. A grenade rolled across the floor. Ryan grabbed Coda and dove behind a steel crate as the explosion tore through the room. Heat slammed against his back. Shrapnel grazed his shoulder. When the smoke cleared, Constantine's voice floated from somewhere deeper in the fortress. "Come find me, Ryan. Your father tried. He didn't succeed." Ryan rose, wounded but standing. Coda limped slightly, hit in the shoulder, but his eyes burned with refusal. Ryan touched the dog's neck gently. "We're not done, not even close." He loaded his father's rifle, every movement steady despite the pain. Then he stepped forward, into the darkest part of the fortress, where Constantine waited beneath the moonlight, his Dragunov ready. The final confrontation of two generations written like destiny in the sand. Dawn crept slowly across the Al-Ramadi desert, washing the sand fortress in pale silver light. The battle had ended only minutes earlier, but the silence that followed felt older than the ruins themselves. Ancient, heavy, carved from exhaustion and the weight of unfinished truths. Ryan Carter stood on the highest platform of the fortress, his breath shaking softly in the cold morning air. The sun had not fully risen. Shadows still stretched long across the sand like reminders of the night's violence. Behind him lay the path he had carved through Constantine's traps, ambushes, and lies. Beneath him lay the men who had followed Constantine and fell, and beside him lay Coda, limping, wounded in the shoulder, yet refusing to rest, his eyes fixed on Ryan as if trying to anchor him. But in this brief moment of calm, Ryan wasn't seeing the desert. He was seeing his father, the final confrontation replayed behind his eyes. The rooftop of the fortress, the shifting moonlight, Constantine waiting with the Dragunov raised. Ryan remembered the sting in his ribs where the bullet grazed him, the way Coda lunged at the perfect moment to distract Constantine, and the echo of his father's words guiding his final shot. The silver bullet casing had glinted between his fingers before he loaded it into the old rifle. Protect, always. And the bullet found its mark. Constantine's body lay somewhere below in the courtyard, still and unmoving, the 2-decade war between him and the Carter family finally ending with a single breath of hot desert wind. Ryan didn't feel triumph, only the quiet relief of a man who had carried a burden too long. He knelt beside Coda, checking the bandage he had improvised around the dog's wound. "You did good, boy," he whispered. Coda nudged his palm gently, as if reminding him that the fight was already behind them. Ryan exhaled shakily. "It's over." But as he said it, he noticed the canvas pouch lying near Constantine's final position, half burned, half buried in dust. Something Constantine had dropped while running, something important enough to carry through a life built on betrayal. Ryan picked it up slowly, his fingers trembling without meaning to. Inside the pouch was a folded sheet of paper, yellowed by time but written recently. A letter. The handwriting was sharp, precise, unmistakably Constantine's, but the first line froze the air around Ryan. "To my brother David." Ryan lowered onto the stone, legs suddenly heavy. He read the letter, each word cut through him like a slow blade. "David, I write this, knowing you will never read it. Perhaps that is best. You were the only friend who ever treated me like someone worth trusting. And I repaid you with betrayal. There is no excuse worthy of forgiveness." Ryan's breath quivered. "You warned me that my ambitions would destroy everything I cared for. You were right. I destroyed our unit. I destroyed myself. And I destroyed the last chance I had at being the man you believed I could become." Coda rested his chin on Ryan's lap, sensing a change in him. "I did not intend for you to die that day in the park. I wanted the boy. I wanted leverage. But when you shielded him, I understood something too late. Some men protect out of duty. You, David, you protected out of love." Ryan's heart stung, as if the desert air had turned to ice. "Your son lives with your spirit, even if he does not know it. He will come for me someday, and when he does, I hope he carries your mercy more than your pain." The letter ended abruptly, the last line smeared by what looked like the trail of a wet thumb or leaking ink. "Forgive me for becoming the enemy you feared most." Ryan folded the paper slowly, carefully, as if the fragile page were made not of fibers, but of truths he never asked to receive. He stared toward the horizon for a long moment. He had imagined Constantine as a monster, a shadow, a villain, carved by hatred. And in many ways, he was. But monsters were not born from darkness. They were shaped by choices, by fear, by ambition, and sometimes by regret. Constantine had made his choices long ago, but David Carter never stopped believing people could change, even those who betrayed him. That belief had cost him his life. Ryan closed his eyes. "Dad, I didn't know." A gust of wind swept across the fortress, lifting grains of sand into a swirling dance. Ryan loosened his grip on the letter, allowing the wind to slip beneath it. The paper fluttered once, twice, then lifted from his fingers, floating into the open air like a final farewell between men whose lives had been tied by war and undone by choices. The wind carried the letter across the desert until it vanished in the light. Ryan stood slowly. The weight in his chest softened, not gone, but quieted. He felt Coda press against his thigh, warm and alive. "It's over, boy," Ryan whispered. "He's gone, but the night is still ours." In the rising dawn, Ryan took one last look at the fortress, a place where 2 generations of conflict had ended, a place where a son finally laid down a war he had carried since childhood. He turned away, walking toward the broken iron gates with Coda limping at his side. Somewhere behind him, The desert wind whispered through the empty corridors, carrying with it the final echo of a past that no longer owned him. The morning sun rose gently over San Diego's naval training compound, casting long beams of gold across the asphalt and steel. The air smelled of salt from the nearby coast, and the rhythmic thud of boots hitting the training field echoed like a familiar heartbeat. Ryan Carter stood at the edge of the field, hands resting behind his back, watching the new recruits push through the final leg of their endurance run. Their breaths were ragged, their steps uneven, but their eyes, every one of them, held that determined spark. A spark he had once carried as a younger man, a spark his father once saw in him. Coda sat beside him, older now, fur dusted with gray, movement slower, but gaze sharp as ever. Even age couldn't dull the dog's instinct. Ryan reached down, giving Coda a gentle scratch behind the ear. "You earned your retirement, old boy," he murmured, "but I'm glad you're still here." Behind them lay Ryan's small office, a metal container converted into a quiet workspace. On its main desk sat a glass display box holding the silver bullet casing, engraved with the words that shaped his life. Protect, always. It caught the morning light, glinting faintly like a lighthouse guiding him back whenever darkness threatened to swallow him whole. He adjusted the brim of his cap and walked toward the recruits. They stood straighter the moment he approached. One, a young man barely 20, asked the question most new soldiers eventually did. "Sir, what's the secret to surviving the night?" Ryan studied him for a long moment, not with harshness, but with the weight of experience. "You don't survive the night," he said softly. "You protect others through it. That's what makes you a SEAL." The trainees nodded, some with awe, some with fear, but all with respect. It was enough. Teaching them, guiding them, this was his new battlefield, one his father would have understood deeply. Later that afternoon, Ryan walked with Coda across the pier where old naval vessels rested like slumbering giants. The ocean wind tugged at his sleeves, bringing with it the faint roar of distant waves. For the first time in years, Ryan felt something close to peace, not the absence of conflict, but the acceptance of one's scars, the knowledge that battles lost and won had shaped him into something stronger, something steadier. He stopped near a railing, watching the horizon shimmer under the bright sky. "We made it, Dad," he whispered. Coda pressed against his leg, letting out a low, content huff. But peace, he knew, never stayed long for men who carried history in their blood. A shadow came to rest behind him. Commander Hale's voice broke the quiet, calm but tinged with something Ryan didn't often hear from him, unease. "Carter, there's something you need to see." Ryan turned. Hale held a sealed folder, thick, marked with red tape indicating top-secret clearance. "This came in 15 minutes ago from Langley." Ryan opened it slowly. Inside were satellite images, blurred shots of a desert convoy, stolen weapons crates bearing the Iron Fang emblem, communications logs with coordinates, and on the final page, a symbol, a new one, a wolf's head, but different, sharper, more brutal. Beneath it, a phrase written in Cyrillic, "The second fang rises." Ryan's pulse tightened. "I thought we ended it." Hale shook his head grimly. "Constantine wasn't the last. He was one head of a very large hydra. And while you were fighting him, the others were watching." Coda growled softly, picking up on Ryan's shift in tension. Hale lowered his voice. "Whoever stepped into the power vacuum isn't hiding. They're sending a message, and it's directed at you." Ryan closed the folder slowly, eyes fixed on the horizon where the sea met the sky. The wind brushed against his face, cool and steady. Yet beneath it he felt something else, a stirring, a warning, the sense that another storm was forming far away, gathering strength. He whispered almost to himself, "It never ends, does it?" Hale exhaled. "No, but maybe this time you won't face it alone." Ryan looked down at Coda, loyal as ever, despite age, then at the trainees in the distance, running drills with bright, untested spirits, then at the folder in his hands, the weight of a new enemy rising. The light of the setting sun cast long shadows across the pier, shadows that hinted at a path stretching into the unknown. Ryan straightened, jaw firm, gaze sharpened. "Then let's find out who's next." Coda barked once, bright, defiant, ready, and as the wind shifted, carrying the faint chill of a conflict waiting beyond the horizon, Ryan Carter walked forward, not toward an ending, but toward the beginning of a new war that had already begun writing itself, to be continued. Sometimes in life, the battles we fight are not only against flesh and blood, but against the shadows that try to break our spirit. Ryan's journey reminds us of something deeper, something many of us forget when the nights grow long and worries grow heavy. We are never walking alone. There are moments when a quiet miracle appears, not in the form of thunder or signs in the sky, but in the gentle nudge of a loyal companion, a voice of courage from someone we love, or a strength rising inside us when we think we have none left. And for those who believe, those moments are whispers from God. Just as God guided Ryan through darkness, He guides each of us through the battles we face every day. Sickness, loneliness, loss, doubt, and the fears we carry silently in our hearts. The same light that carried Ryan forward can carry you too. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to share it, leave a comment, and subscribe so these messages of hope and courage can reach more people in need. May God bless you, keep you safe, heal your wounds, and walk beside you through every storm. And may His miracles, big or small, find their way to you today.